about comprehending narrative text and the strategies that we can use to help our students better understand what they're reading. So I'm going to read a passage to you guys, and I just want you to listen. One day, little Johnny was playing on the playground at school all by himself. He was clearly very lonely. Sally saw Johnny playing alone, so she decided to invite him to play a game of tag with her and her friends. Johnny was very excited to have some new friends. So I want you guys to close your eyes, and I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. And I want you guys to think about the thoughts that you had while reading this and also how it made you feel. Okay, open your eyes and talk with your shoulder partner about what you thought about. Would anyone like to share how, after reading this, it made you feel? Yes.
It made us happy when Sally decided to play with Johnny.
Yes, so you guys placed meaning with the text after reading. So today's objectives, the objective is to build awareness of the comprehension process for students by using different techniques. So when you're a teacher, there are different strategies that you can use in your classroom to help your students place meaning with what they're reading. And the 4 strategies that we're going to discuss today are reciprocal teaching, story maps, questioning the author, and think louds.
So now the chapter is based off of 3 main subheadings. The first one is developing readers' awareness of story structure. So these are like the elements like the beginning, internal response, resolution, and reaction to story. Mapping out stories and building a schema, which is reading and telling and performing stories in class. Showing relationships between the story parts, and story frames and circular story maps are some of these things that you can use. The second part of it is scaffolding the development and teaching of reading comprehension strategies. This means asking questions such as reciprocal questioning, question-answer relationships, questioning the author, and close reading. The third part is guiding interactions between the reader and text, such as directed reading thinking activity, discussion webs, text connections, which we actually did a couple study guides ago, which are text to text, text to self, and text to world. And they also talk about technology with comprehension skills. Now, the 4 main parts that we're going to go over today in our stations and in this PowerPoint is reciprocal teaching, which means instructional strategy that builds readers' awareness of and expertise in the use of various comprehension skills and strategies. Story maps, which is an analysis of a story's organizational elements and used to strengthen instructional decisions. Questioning the author, which is a comprehension-centered instructional strategy designed to show readers how to question the author's intent while reading. And think aloud, which is a comprehension strategy in which students talk about their thoughts as they read aloud.
Okay, so for the transliteracy connection, you can use digital text to promote differentiation by allowing students to use accessibility function to customize their settings. So if you're reading a text online, you can do things like change the font size, the spacing, the color contrast, and the bolding. And this frees up the cognitive load for comprehension because some students need to read things differently in order to understand it better. And some texts are also only available through technology, so things like blogs, text, emails, tweets can only be found online, so it's important to incorporate digital text into your classroom, especially in today's society where technology is becoming more and more prevalent. Some helpful features of digital text are there's a menu or table of contents that remains visible while reading. Specific tools are available so they can use highlighting or have the story be read aloud to them, and hyperlinks allow the students to further practice areas which they may be weak in. So if they don't understand vocabulary, we can hyperlink it to like some kind of vocab game that kind of gets them used to the words better. There's also visual learning software, which provides graphic organizers and mind maps that can be used to help illustrate different text structures, and it helps students recognize the important elements that they read when they are seeing the overview of an entire text. So one of the transliteracy connections that is really helpful today is Epic, which is a website that is the leading digital library for kids, and it provides access to 35,000 of the best books, learning videos, quizzes, and more, and it's personalized for the individual student. So click on that. It can be used by the teacher, it can be used by the parent, and it can be used by the student. So as you can see, they have all different ages, 5 and under, ages 6 to 8, and so on and so forth, and there's a bunch of different books for those age groups. And if you scroll down a little bit, it allows you to create multiple profiles. So like I said, the parent can have a profile of the teacher and the student themselves, and you can personalize it for various different skill levels. So that's super helpful in the classroom.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about reciprocal teaching. And so what reciprocal teaching is, and it's explained in the textbook as well, but it's an approach to help scaffold reading comprehension through a small group. And so the teacher will demonstrate how to do one of the Fab Fours, which is predict, question, summarize, and clarify. And then they will release the students to be the teacher of their group. And so it breaks it down into 4 parts, as I said, and the benefits of reciprocal teaching is that it builds social interaction within the students in your classroom. It activates the prior knowledge, especially when it comes to predicting. That really helps when it has some prior knowledge about that. And it develops leadership and independence among your students as they have to take on the role of the teacher, and it gives them some responsibility. It promotes metacognition and flexible thinking, and reciprocal teaching has many benefits to learning and prepare them for more cognitive and social aspects of reading comprehension. So 2 ways you can do it is in a small group or individually. And so today in my group, we're going to be doing it individually, so I'm going to explain a little bit more about the small group aspect of it. So the teacher, as I said, is going to model the Fab Four to her students, and she's going to explain and sample how to do that, and then she's going to release her students to do that with their own small group. And so even though she has released them to do that, she can re-enter the lesson in the group at any time if she sees that they're off topic or they need some help. Individually, the teacher can assign the Fab Four to each student as they are responsible for answering each in written format. And so you'll get to do this today as well. And so through the research that I found from Tarchi and Pintos, that the results show that reciprocal teaching is a part of expert scaffolding strategy and cooperative learning of benefits students learning in small group settings. So that just means that small group settings help students learn more. And then Kelly Strickland states in her article that metacognitive thinking is an important tool that gives students insight to their learning styles and allows them to reflect on which tools help them gain the most understanding. So being able to understand your own process when you are comprehending text helps you better approach it. And so I'm going to butcher these names, so be prepared, but Ahmadi and Gilhajani say that the cognitive and metacognitive levels are both covered under the strategy of reciprocal teaching because it helps students improve reading comprehension and being more independent.
So next part is story maps. According to the textbook, a story map is a way of identifying major structural elements, both explicit and implicit, underlying the story to be taught in class. So a story map is a great type of organizational type thing you can use for both teachers and students. So it's a visual aid. For teachers, it is useful for planning questions and providing information for breakpoints for when you're reading to students. Breakpoints are a great way to have in-class reading, stoppage time, to let them all talk about the book. For students, it helps them understand the structure and elements of the story. And then story maps also help to build schema, which shows the relationship between the story elements and reinforces the knowledge of the book through different types of story mapping. Now the 2 different types I'm going to focus on my station are story frames and circular story maps. As you can see on the left is a picture of a story frame where they go through the different elements of a book, and then they do the same thing except it's just more in a circle for the other one. Now some of the research I found is that Krita and Jarnes states that the results of research on developing the teaching materials to write narrative usage, graphic organizing story map can be seen from a level of validity, practicability, and effectiveness. So this means that it worked really well in the classroom for not only regular classrooms, but also for classrooms that have learning disabilities. According to Khatib and Faruji's article, using the story map, teacher may encourage his or her students to infer meaning from the text and is able to develop students' reading and speaking skills. And they also state that using story maps as a graphic organizer for understanding short stories was found to be of great importance to enhance the learner's incidental vocabulary learning. So So that means they're just expanding their vocabulary while working on the story maps and understanding what the different elements are in the story.
Okay, so I'm going to be discussing questioning the author, and according to our textbook, questioning the author is an instructional strategy that is used to help students better comprehend text in order to place meaning with what they are reading. So basically, as a teacher, you're going to give a book to your students to read, and a lot of times they'll just read the book to say the words, and they'll finish reading and they won't understand what they actually read. So if you ask them to ask questions while they're reading, it'll help them to place more meaning with the story. And according to Vaca et al., QTA is designed to show readers how to question the author's intent while reading. It's been found that questioning helps students think more deeply about the text that's being read. And also students should act on the author's message and should analyze what the author is saying. So a few kinds of questions that you could ask, there are of course more than just these, but a few examples that the textbook gave were, what is the author trying to say here? What does the author mean? So what? What is the significance of the author's message? Does this make sense with what the author told us before? And does the author explain this clearly? So studies have shown that using this strategy, QTA, improved reading comprehension levels in students. So back in 2015, there was a study conducted where they took 6 8th grade students and they asked them to use QTA strategies while reading. And the results were very positive. It was found that their reading comprehension levels were increased after using QTA. So QTA not only helps students comprehend specific narrative and expository texts, but also teaches them to view reading as an active process of constructing meaning rather than a passive process of extracting information and answering questions. As teachers, I think that we'll see a lot of times students will read the text just in order to answer the questions that we give them. But in reality, that's not the point of reading. The point of reading is for them to be able to develop meaning with what they are reading. So it's also been found that student talk has increased by using QTA. The teacher talk decreases and student talk has been found to double. And then lastly, regurgitation of information is decreased when using QTA. Okay, so ways to implement it in your classroom. The first way is just to model it. So as a teacher, when you give them the text, you need to tell them how to ask questions while they're reading. Tell them the questions that they should be asking while reading. And you should encourage this if they're silent reading or reading aloud. So here's an example of one way that you could use it in your classroom. It's just in a chart formation. It's what we're going to be doing in my station today. But this chart has questions on it such as, what is the author trying to tell you? Why is the author telling you that? Is it said clearly? And so forth. So this just allows students to better understand what they are reading and place meaning within it.
Okay, so for think aloud, it's pretty much like what it sounds like. It's when the teacher is going to think aloud while they are reading a passage or doing a process in order to demonstrate to their students the way in which they should conduct a specific process. So think aloud, according to our textbook, is a strategy in which teachers and students share their thoughts, discuss what they wonder about and what confuses them, and make connections as they are reading. So they're going to share, discuss, and make connections. That's the primary point of them. And like I said before, it's just allowing the teacher to show the students how to model the correct way to go about a specific process. So read-alouds are very, very helpful to do think-alouds with, because it's the prime opportunity to conduct a think-aloud, because it allows the teacher to demonstrate comprehensive strategies that involve asking questions, making predictions, visualizing, making judgments, and sharing personal connections. And this also allows the teacher kind of to have a little bit of a window into the mind of the student, because it kind of shows the student, or the teacher, what the student's thinking about as they're reading a specific text. Think aloud can be used as a listening activity. One of the research articles that I read studied 4th graders, and it had the teacher do a think aloud and had the students listen to what the teacher was thinking aloud, and then they had to reflect on what the teacher was conveying to them through her think aloud. And it's also really helpful for ELL students, which I found was very interesting, because it helps them to develop the ability to monitor their reading comprehension and employ strategies to facilitate understanding of the text. So it helps them promote self-regulation through pausing and evaluating, because they'll stop and they'll pause and they'll read and they'll like really dive into the meaning of the text that they're reading or the passage that they have in front of them. And this helps them comprehend it better as they're learning another language. It also is correlated to higher test scores. Another one of the articles that I read studied how middle school, second language students, teachers that used the think aloud strategies for them were able to have their students score significantly higher on tests of comprehension than those that did not. So it shows that students that are able to have Think Alouds demonstrated in their classroom can comprehend better and then perform better on certain tests involving comprehension. And it also can be used in all subjects, so not just reading or read alouds. It can be used in math. If you're going through a specific math problem, the teacher can use it to go through each individual step, and then as they model that, the students can then go back to their C and do their homework or do their projects and model the same steps as they complete the math problem. It can also be used in writing when you go through a writing process or draft a letter, because it allows the students to think, who is my audience, what am I writing this for, what's the purpose of what I'm writing, and it allows them to go through that process in their mind. Okay, so how to conduct a Think Aloud, Read Aloud in the classroom. I'm going to be focusing specifically on the read aloud aspect of Think Alouds, and what you're going to want to do is, as a teacher, you want to select a passage that has difficult vocabulary, contradictions, or can be interpreted in multiple different ways or is unclear. So you don't want to pick a passage that's like super easy to understand, because then there's really not a point in like diving deeper if everyone gets the meaning. You want to do one that's a little bit unclear or might be a little difficult to understand, so you can really evaluate what you're reading. The teacher is going to read the passage aloud, and the students will follow along silently. And as the teacher reads along, they're going to describe what he or she is thinking while they read the passage. So the little chart in the top right shows different sentence stems that you can use when you do a Think Aloud. So you want to make predictions. You can say, I predict that, or in the next part, I think that this will happen, or I think this is, and then you can do questioning as well. What did, when did, what did, where was, responding, I feel, and then like so on and so forth. So as you ask these questions in front of the class, as you're reading, it kind of gives the students the ability to see what kind of questions they should be asking themselves when they're reading on their own.
So in conclusion, after everything we spoke about, in order for students to better comprehend the text, they need to be aware of story structures, as Alexis had spoke about. And other ways of comprehending text is to raise questions as they read, which is questioning the author, is one of the strategies, reciprocal teaching, and Think Alouds. They all allow students to better comprehend narrative text. So go ahead and bring up the Alright, here's your groups, but before you move to your groups, I want you to turn to someone next to you and talk to someone about something that